let's just dive into the brain and understanding the brain. It's a really a busy place. Inside your cranium, the brain is conducting more than 1.3 trillion transactions a second. It's a very busy place. This is an artist's conception of a synaptic connection, both electrical and chemical. Again, 1.3 trillion a second. Really busy place. But what organizes all of that? When we look at all of that activity, we don't just want to look randomly across all of the things that the brain does. We want to look at, in effect, an agenda, if you will. And the agenda focuses around emotion and the role of emotion in the brain. And it's never been more important than it is now, with employees working at home in a very stressful environment with the coronavirus. So when we look at drivers of engagement, we bifurcate it into two categories. We have these cognitive things that leadership and the leadership literature has been focused on for a long time. Capability, tools, training, resources. What about focus and alignment? What's our mission? And those things are very important. What I want to focus on is the emotional side of engagement. That is in the part of the brain that deals and processes emotion, and the importance of relationships, well-being, safety and trust, the role of recognition and validation, inspiration and motivation. We think of emotion often as something that feels mercurial or intractable, but this is a definition that we use at E3 Solutions with our clients. It's our internal GPS guiding our actions, behaviors, and thoughts toward a destination the brain has been seeking every day since birth. The guidance is prolific, subconscious, and driven by the hardwired need for connection, validation, and predictability. And a key point here that we especially important in these times, that emotion has control precedence in your brain. And all that means is that when something triggers the emotional centers of the brain, threat, for example, threat detection, that overrides every other function of the brain. So let's dig into that a little bit. And to make this make a little more sense, we want to just talk about two specific areas of the brain. The limbic system, which is in the midbrain. The limbic system is where we process threat. It's the epicenter of fight, flight, or freeze. And then in the prefrontal cortex, this is where we do our thinking, our intellect, if you will, where we process problems, where we hear and process language, for example, and do our work. These two key parts of the brain constantly having conversations with each other, but in the end, the limbic system, if triggered, has what's called control precedence in the brain. And the important thing about the limbic system is not just its control precedence, but its agenda. That is, the limbic system isn't just this random process that's just looking at all kinds of things. It has an agenda. Every human brain begins with the same agenda. Not only do we share 99.9% of our DNA with each other, we also share a common agenda. And I want to dive into that a little bit for you, because it's all about the role of connection with other human beings. This is a quote from a brilliant neuroscientist, clinical psychologist, Jim Cohn at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. He says the dominant ecology for human beings is other human beings. That is, we are hardwired at birth to be in a group, a clan, a tribe. And when we are in groups, safely ensconced in a group with people that we trust and can rely on, load share with, we can operate at our best, at our full capacity. When we operate in isolation, when we're alone, and the clinical term is emotional isolation, if we're emotionally isolated, we don't perform at our best. We just can't, because the brain, the limbic system, triggers that actually as threat. So we have a really simple diagram here. So the limbic system wants to survive. It wants you to survive, wants all of us to survive. And it sees that through, if I can just simplify this a little bit, through two key lenses: safety and connection. And what we now know, irrefutably, is that the limbic system will never feel safe if it's alone. It needs to be connected. And when it does have what social neuroscientists refer to as reliable social resources, what in the therapy world might call safe and secure connections, when we have those, we can operate at our best. We can thrive and operate at close to our full capacity. And that's what we consider to be a safe haven work environment. And our work over the last decade has been to try to create that environment inside workplaces. Now, this is not about a coddling zone or where people aren't held accountable. This is strictly about understanding what the brain sees as a safe environment where it can relax its threat detection systems and apply itself to the task at hand. So the limbic system, even though it doesn't have its own consciousness, you could say it's asking two questions all day long. And this again comes from the work of Dr. Cohn. But the simple question, what's next? The limbic system wants to know what's next. Now, why is that so important? It's a very, very simple issue. If you know what's going to happen next, do you feel more safe or less safe? Clearly, we feel more safe. I'll ask the question in reverse. If we don't know what's going to happen next, do you feel more safe or less safe? And I think you would agree, we feel less safe. And I'm going to give you some tips here in just a second. I want to go to this other question, and it is more closely related to connection. That is, how am I doing? The limbic system understands that if it's in a group, its chances of survival go way, way up. So we constantly want to know, am I in the group? Am I safe? Do they see me? Do they know who I am? Do they know what I do? Do they like what I do? Am I a valued member of the group? So how am I doing is a key issue. So what can managers and leaders do? What do we ask them to do traditionally inside the workplace? We ask them to be consistent and to provide consistency, to be predictable, and to try to provide as much predictability as possible, to be clear, lots of clarity, and to be inclusive. That is, to include people in decisions, which gives them a heads up on what's going to happen down the road. Now, here's the question for all of us, and it may seem obvious already, but almost all of these four issues, consistency, predictability, being clear, clarity, and inclusive, are less likely to be happening for employees today than they were a month ago. So it's harder to provide these conditions for people where they can thrive. Now, on the how am I doing question, here we want managers and leaders to make sure they're providing lots of validation and recognition for employees, signaling to them that they are seen and how they are valued. And that to the brain feels safe. That is relaxing. We can stand down our threat detection systems. I'm going to be okay here. Feedback and support, like I'm doing work, but am I doing it in the best way? Could you give me a little feedback on how I could do it better? And support me, and support my growth and development and my success. They want to know, how do they succeed? So clarity on what success looks like is something we want managers to do. And of course, this issue of am I valued? And what we see when we put these things together is they actually can connect. So we want managers to consistently provide validation and recognition, be predictable in the way they give feedback and support, be clear in how they express to employees what success looks like, and to be inclusive, which sends the signal to the individual that they're valued. That's why they were asked to participate, is because the manager or leader values their input. These are conditions that we work hard to create inside our client company work cultures. It's even now more challenging to do this, and managers and leaders need to step up and view these through a different lens. And that's what we want to walk you through right now.